Let the magic rise.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is London Calling.
My family and I.
Ooh.
Hey, folks. Welcome to Jingly-Jangly. Fake news and imaginary views for the truth, post-truth society. Yeah, I had a glass of wine. Yes, your antidote to reality with me, Olly Connolly in Spain. JJ's special chicken correspondent, Gary Branson on West Coast, California. And you, if you want to come check in on our sanity. Huge show today in Trump We Trust. We're discussing the first few weeks in Trumpton with US Army vet Chris Neiweem and anti-media's Nick Bernabe. Oh, no, I'm really cocking up the intro again. I'll tell you, a huge cheers to our Mona Radler, just on the Rev. Had a lot of fun on her show last week. Thanks, darling. It's 4 p.m. in DC. It's 9 in London. It's 1 in Cali. Oh, blimey, I got my fader stuck too. I'll tell you what a state. Gary, very worrying situation in your backyard. But
well, that's what
I got to say, hey, your chickens are on high ground. I'm worried about your chickens, mate.
They are roosting in the roof of the barn. They're going to be high and dry, heavy on the high because I'm blowing cannabis smoke at them. So they're going to be great.
That's good. Well, I'm pleased to hear that. And we're going to need all the hemp we can get to bolster up that dam.
Oh, man. There is another. Have you heard of the meteorological term, atmospheric river?
No, I can't say I have.
Yeah, we're going to get another one of those for this rainy season.
What on earth? But that's a lot of rain, is it?
Yeah, they call it an atmospheric river because it is like a river flowing through the atmosphere. You know,
right.
like the things that's going to cause the Oroville Dam just upstream from Sacramento, California, the capital of California, the thing that has already caused the mandatory evacuation of 180,000 people downstream.
Have they all gone? 180,000.
All the hotels in the greater gigantic radius are packed to the gills.
People with reporters, CNN, disaster reporting.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they love it. I'll tell you, they've got all their drones lined up. I bet, waiting for that dam to go.
Yeah, except that if they have drones in the air, they'll get blown away by the atmospheric river coming through. So I don't know if we're going to get all that good of footage if that happens.
Look, Gary, if this did, God forbid, yeah, but if it did go, then it is one hell of a week, not just a day, but a week or a month to bury bad news. They could make a heyday out of this, the globalists. But whether or not Trump would let that happen, but this is really, really where we could find out what his true colors are, because he could get away with so much. If everybody's distracted with that, God forbid. But it does make you think from a conspiratorial point of view, which is kind of some of what we do here on this show, that, this is an opportunity that we do not want to see play out.
Well, yeah, it's like Dick Cheney said, never allow a good tragedy to go to waste.
Yeah, he did.
if you see something horrible happening, be an opportunist about it.
Yep.
Do something that normally everybody would be up in arms about, but then since they're so distracted by this other thing, you can slip it on through.
And Rahm Emanuel said the same thing when he was, working in the White House. And in the UK, on 9/11 itself, in the afternoon, after the tragedy had pretty much, finalized, one of the Blair staffers, one of the press assistants, whatnots in the Blair office, one of the spinmeisters, said, "This is a great day to bury bad news."
Oh, yeah.
So how cynical is that?
Very
and this is what
Machiavellian.
happens. This is what happens. Yeah, very Machiavellian. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, man. So what else is going on? What's Trump done this week?
Well,
Big
one
press
of his
today, no?
mouthpieces is about to go down in flames. Kellyanne Conway.
Really? Why? What's she done? She looks like Beavis and Butthead. Which of the characters is it? It's either Beavis or Butthead, the one with the long nose, or they both
Beavis.
got long... Beavis.
Yeah, the blonde-haired one is Beavis, and that's, I think, closer to what she looks like.
Yeah, she looks
But-
like Beavis out of Beavis and Butthead,
Mhm.
yeah. Can you do that? Yeah.
I used to know a guy who could recreate entire Beavis and Butthead episodes off the top of his head, and you'd think that you were listening to it on the radio, but no, he was just making it up as he went along. But all of
You could
Trump's,
do a few things off the top of your head, actually, Gary. You've got quite a flight path going on there. Have you ever had Harrison Ford to try and land on your head?
I would not allow that man within a little time zone of my head. I mean, I don't know how many times he's had problems in the air, but yeah, this
man.
latest one, he almost landed on a passenger liner and said, "Is that plane supposed to be under me?" No, Harry, it's not. This
This is the guy out of Star Wars. He, what is it? What
Yeah.
that fighter in? I mean,
Yeah, the Millennium Falcon needs a new pilot.
oh, dude, I'll tell you what.
Turn in the keys and just drop him off and go back to his stroller, and I think it'd be okay.
I love Harrison Ford, yeah, but I
He's
tell
a
you, this is for
wonderful
him
guy,
being a.
But yeah, he's got.
Sorry. Yeah, lovely bloke. Lovely bloke. Well, what have we got coming up tonight? Because my intro was a bit garbled. I was a bit kind of late on the mic, and I don't know, didn't know what I was doing really. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, tell us who we got.
Go on. No, you. Well, you.
Me.
Please. Yes.
You lined them up.
Oh,
You got their
blimey.
bios. Lay it on us
Yeah.
again. Let me know who it is. We got
Okay,
Nick-
all right. We got Chris Neiweem coming in and having a chat.
Yay!
Yeah, U.S. Army sergeant in there, and he's a veteran, and he talks a lot for veterans and their rights and stuff like that. And he's interested in all sorts of stuff, and he's on the media a lot, and we're lucky to have him because he's very busy these days, talking about what's going on and commenting on it. And I got to say, I'm really, really looking forward to having a chat with him because he kind of bridges the gap, as tend to do military types, between, if you like, alt news and reality on the ground. And I think it's going to be fascinating to have a chat with him about Trump's early days and the point of view from the military, and looking at things like Iran and North Korea as well is a big question mark this week again, isn't it?
Oh,
And,
did you hear about
yeah.
Kim Jong-nan?
Yeah, his brother-in-law.
His brother-in-law was assassinated with poison needles.
Oh,
by
sorry,
two
it's not funny. Not
two
funny.
female assassins. It's
Yeah.
not funny, but it is
Quite
fascinating.
sexy. Two female.
Yeah.
Go on. Tell us the story. That sounds good.
It's something straight out of a James Bond film. Really is. This was Kim Jong-il's illegitimate
Brother-in-law.
son. No.
Oh.
Kim Jong-un.
His father's illegitimate son.
Kim Jong-il was the
Yeah.
father
Yeah.
of both Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-nan. And Kim
Right.
Jong-nan was the son that he had via his mistress. So he was the bastard, like Jon Snow.
Yeah, like Jon Snow. Winter's
Totally
coming.
like Jon Snow. probably less sexy than Jon Snow for all our listeners out there who like Jon Snow's look, and there are a lot of them. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. No, winter is here, according to the Democrats. Here. This is HQ earlier. Oh, winter's here, mate.
White Raven, the White Crow has arrived. It's true. It's true.
Did you see any of his press conference earlier?
Who's?
Tonight?
Trump's?
Yeah, his first presser since being, tucked up in Pennsylvania.
No, I have been in the wilderness. I've been in the wind for days.
Oh yeah,
so
you have, haven't you? Oh yeah, you had a bit of a domestic, didn't you? Yeah, we won't go into that. You had to take your chickens to the vet.
Well, I had to go rescue somebody from the wilderness is what I had to do. But all is well now. But it just means that I'm a little bit out of my finger is not as on the pulse this week as it might be other weeks, but still pretty on the pulse.
Look, I'll tell you what. Not to worry. What I'm going to do, Chris, are you there?
I sure am.
God bless you.
Hi,
mate.
Chris.
Okay. Let me give you a proper intro. We've got a veteran U.S. Army sergeant, an activist, a widely cited spokesperson, Chris Neiweem, president of his group, the Neiweem Group, former legislative associate at Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, a former sergeant of the U.S. Army, former director of veterans policy at United Spinal Association, former legislative staff. This is all former, mate, isn't it? I mean, what are you doing now? No. Staff policy and government affairs at Wounded Warrior Project, blah, blah, blah. Chris, what do you think of the early Trump days? How are you feeling?
I think it's wildly entertaining. I'm having a good time watching it. I mean, certainly the days of 3 people watching C-SPAN are probably over. It's an interesting time. I do think that
it is. I think it's out of business.
It is. I mean, I think it's entertaining. I just want to throw that disclosure out there. But I think, it's kind of a new era. I mean, there were a lot of people that were just sort of disinvested for a while. Most people that would traditionally vote Democrat that finally just sort of threw their weight behind someone different. But I think the first days are a little rocky. They're trying to get their footing. And I think we're going to see where things fall down when we actually start looking at an agenda with Congress here. So it'll be interesting to see. This first press conference certainly is going to show us that the combat with the media and the president is sure to continue, I think.
Yeah, totally. Oh, these are momentous changes. America seems to be going through a bit of an identity crisis. Is that putting it lightly?
I think that people are trying to, just figure out what they want to do next. I mean, right now there's certainly a divide. I mean, there's almost kind of I don't want to put it on 2 sides, but there's sort of 2 generic sides. One is people want to see the way the government is completely changing. They want to see, they don't want to hear the same sort of political answers. And on the other side, you have people that feel as though this administration, this election embodied just sort of the root causes of division that made it difficult for so many people to achieve equal rights under the footing of the law. So it's sort of this real division right now. And I think it's just a really interesting time.
And Chris, I'm going to introduce our other guest in a second, but I did such a bad job introducing you. So would you please tell me a bit about your group and what you're up to now?
I thought it was pretty good, except for my dashing good looks were not mentioned.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which I think is important. But so
Jon Snow's got nothing on you. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's so Neiweem Group is a government affairs communications firm. It's a small business. It represents companies, also many veterans before the Congress, the White House, and does a lot of different things. But it's sort of rooted in the same spirit as those former positions that sort of grew me for this, which were veteran advocacy. I spend most of my time, I'm most well known for legislative advocacy before the Congress, in front of the House, the Senate, advocating for better veterans benefits. And I'm continuing to do that, although now I have a little more freedom and flexibility. And the real impetus behind the Neiweem Group was just really boredom. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to have excitement, and I can just go on the radio with you guys whenever the heck I want, as opposed to previous positions, which, as you know, you have to run everything by the boss. Now I run everything by the boss in the mirror every morning, and it's a lot more fun.
Well, that's great. And it's great to have you on the show. And thank you very much. But okay. So you are actually a lobbyist, aren't you? Now, does that mean that there are white hat lobbyists as well as black hats? Because we always think about lobbyists being, basically drumming up dollar for bailing out oil companies or something, or giving them, but you are a lobbyist, aren't you? But you're lobbying for veterans' rights.
Correct. I mean, I would probably say that the image is the black hat lobbyist. For folks that work in the, professional advocacy, they would call themselves government relations, sort of a euphemism. I mean, they are a lobbyist, but I would say that probably 80% are white hat, 10% are black hat, and then the other 10% would probably be somewhere in between. I mean, there certainly are some companies, I think they pay more in lobbyist salaries than they do in taxes, but that's only a small percent. I mean, your average veteran advocacy lobbyist is earning somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 a year, which, if you look at the cost of living in Washington, D.C., frankly, is almost modest. Yeah. So I try to push back a little bit on that just because most are just doing good work. But certainly, these are people that are paid to push a position, and many of those positions do have an economic price tag to them. So I always welcome the scrutiny with caveats.
Okay, well, that's cool. I'm going to ask a bit more about lobbying in a bit because it's involved in Trump's contract for the American people, or with the American people, the 100-day plan. So we'll be asking a bit about that. But thank you very much. And Nick, we've got Nick Bernabe here as well. And he is the founder at the Anti-Media. And we're going to be talking quite a bit about that as well. And about, some of Trump's remarks today regarding the media. Yes, indeed. And he's got a radio show, the Anti-Media Radio and what have you. And last night, he was hosting the Great Anarcho Debate. And that I want to ask him about, because we're going to find out what on earth actually is being an anarchist and la-di-da-di-da, and where does it relate in term, in kind of relation to the kind of government we have at the moment. How could maybe we take, God blind, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm going to ask him about that. Nick, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for having me on, Ollie.
Hey, Nick, good to talk to you, mate. I'll tell you, I've been trying to catch up with this guy all week. He is the most difficult person to pin down. You've had a busy week.
Very busy, yeah. We launched our rebuild of our website on Monday, and it's just been a crazy roller coaster ride ever since. And I was also hosting a big debate last night between several anarchists. So, it's been a extremely busy week. I've also got a bunch of my coworkers in town, and we're just doing all this media stuff. We've gotten how many articles did we get up, SM? So far this week, I mean, on Monday we had 70 articles go up on our website.
You sound almost as tired as that, Gary. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can imagine, we're putting up 70 articles a day. And it's a lot of work, but we're really
that's
happy
across social media. 70,000 a day across alternative news, basically.
Well, no, we're 70 articles a day are going up on our website. But across social media, I mean, we're getting a lot of interest in our new site, because what we've kind of built is it's like a news site with social features, and so we've kind of partnered with the public to help us in the news gathering process. And so it's a very interesting concept. It's something new in the independent media movement. And it's been a great success, man. We've been getting, the people that read our website can post links on our website, and other people can see them, and they can get their links featured on the front page and stuff. So it's really interesting. And
so you're basically pulling activists together. You're kind of giving us a bit of a portal and with a news source as well. Obviously, there's always going to be a bit of an angle there, but I mean, your news stories, because we've all heard about how Facebook choose theirs. How do you choose yours for your front page, just out of interest?
Well, we actually have a upvote downvote system on the front page, and it's kind of like the same one that is used on Reddit.
Yep.
So basically, it goes like this. We'll publish an article, and the one with the most amount of upvotes in the least amount of time will be at the very top of the front page.
Right.
And so the older an article gets, the lower it starts to move down the page. So basically, when you go to the antimedia.org, the content you see closest to the top is the newest with the most upvotes and the least downvotes. And so that's basically it. It's all up to our users how, what content is being, viewed on our front page. So what we're trying to do really is not be a news outlet that is trying to like push an agenda on people, but we're a news outlet that is relying on our audience to decide what content it is that is important to them.
Yeah, we had a big show last week on fake news, basically, and we had a couple of activists online, and we had an MSM guy who's an old friend of mine, because I came out of MSM myself some years ago, and it was fascinating, but it's awesome that now we're really having this debate as, what is news? And actually, you know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to play you something. Trump earlier made me laugh, because I used to work at the Beeb, and this was him when he was asked a question at his press conference earlier today, the exchange he had with the BBC.
Where are you from? BBC. Good. Here's another beauty. It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair. Yeah, sure. Mr. President. Just like CNN, right?
I mean, well, yeah.
That's hilarious.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on.
I you know what? I'm going to play that again.
Where are you from? BBC. Good. Here's another beauty. It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair. Yeah, sure. Mr. President. Just like CNN, right?
Yeah, you are fake news. That's what he said to CNN. You are fake news. We are seeing. Now this, I'm opening this up to everybody now. I want to get a bit of a round table going on. We are seeing an incredible time in terms of truth, a chrysalis of awareness going on with people realizing that they've been lied to. No, and whoa, we're all involved here, guys. This is exciting. No.
Well, yeah. I mean, Nick is one of the people who has inspired me to become more active politically. Nick, thank you for that, by the way. I mean, you got an article on your website for everyone who wants to look at this at home, theantimedia.org. Like 9 women and a child killed in an air raid on a Yemen funeral. And guess who launched that attack? Yeah, exactly. So I really appreciate Nick's work over the years, and
that was Trump. That was Trump that launched that one, wasn't it? That was just recent, no? That was just last week or so. This week,
right?
That particular one.
And that was just earlier today, as a matter of fact.
But what we've got is we're kowtowing still to Saudi Arabia. Actually, Trump is doing what we expected of Clinton. This is bad, no?
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, this it's really the Saudi-led coalition is the way they like to word it. But in reality, the way we talk about it when we do our original reporting on it is, we call it the U.S.-backed coalition because really the U.S. is providing a lot of the logistical support. And of course, between the U.S. and Britain, we're supplying most of the military, the arms to Saudis as well. So we're giving them the arms. We're helping to tell them where to drop them. It just we're trying to say we're innocent because we're not physically dropping them ourselves, but I mean, we're enabling, obviously.
Yeah, we are. We're paying the tax. We've got blood in our hands.
Oh my God, this was a double tap strike. Are you serious?
Mad.
For those listening at home, a double tap strike is a situation where they send in a bomb and then they wait for the first responders like medics and that sort of thing to come in, and then they drop another bomb there and kill all the emergency aid workers.
It's very cruel.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Isn't that a war crime?
Against the Geneva Convention
or
something?
It's a full-blown war crime. It's a horrific thing to do. We should not be doing it.
Chris, you know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that's terrible. I admit I have not seen the report or seen the specific surveillance or primary on the source reporting on it, but I don't question that it did occur. I mean, again, we have to take a step back. I would agree that first, U.S. foreign policy has always been hypocritical. I think most nations' foreign policy is hypocritical. It's like a complex chess game. It's constantly changing, where you look at even going back to Iraq prior to Saddam Hussein, when you have investments in one side that has a more pro-Western view, and then they end up going a different way, and then you're constantly trying to meddle and experiment, and you can never wonder why it's never successful. But I think that as well as Saudi Arabia, I mean, frankly, if anyone should be on the travel ban list, it should probably be Saudi Arabia, because their citizens are actually the ones that attacked the country. And, it's like, I'm a big AC/DC fan. They have a song called Money Talks. And I think we just have to accept that premise that money talks. It talks everywhere. It talks across foreign policy, domestic policy, relationships. And Bad Religion was another American punk rock band that had a lot of very interesting sort of political philosophy messages about relationships and money and those sorts of things. So I just want to start with that premise. I think it's troubling. I think if that were to be widely reported on, that would be just unbelievable. I mean, you don't attack aid workers. You're obviously not supposed to be attacking those sorts of targets.
It reminds me of the droning of the hospital in Afghanistan, where the guys from Médecins Sans Frontières, with the French charity, the doctors
Without Borders.
Frontiers. Yeah. And they were hit, and but the story eventually got buried. But I mean, it was terrible, and there was incredible eyewitness testimony from our own, if you like, seeing it there, being hit.
Oh yeah,
and
the medical staff in that hospital were calling to the American military forces and saying, "Please stop bombing us. You're bombing our hospital. Please stop." And they didn't stop. It was
unbelievable. So okay. I want to ask the same question of Nick in a second, but I want to ask you, Chris, and because on the run up to the election, I was under the impression from the kind of coverage I'd seen from, say, the Veterans Today website and what have you, that generally speaking, the U.S. military was really pro-Trump compared to Clinton. What do you think about that? And what do you think about him all in all and so on? Go on.
I think the military tends to have sort of just a traditional sort of conservative just blend to it. I mean, a lot of service members come from rural areas. They just have that sort of just that iconic, just sort of America first, sort of imagery. And so they tend to be a little more conservative. And it's a very small population. I mean, there's 22 million vets in America out of around, 325 million people. There's only about 2 point some odd serving. So it's a small population. Veterans did vote for Trump 2-1. I've
2-1,
and I ended up being one of the two. I was going to be part of the 0 because I did not intend on voting until about, and this is something interesting for you guys just to consider, is I mean, I'm a policy guy. I have to work with Democrats and Republicans. I just do. But
sure.
I ended up voting for him. I think Robert De Niro, the American actor, pushed me over the edge.
I'm going to punch him in the face.
I just had one too many limousine liberal, rich, telling me what to do. And I said, you know what? I'm voting for Trump. Yeah, I said I'm voting for Trump because I'm just so sick and tired of the sort of would the word be proselytizing? I mean, essentially just that lecturely sort of tone where it's okay for Hillary Clinton to vote for the Iraq War and for hundreds of thousands of people to be killed because that's exactly what happened under her policies. But yet,
oh no, it's not.
Well, she did vote for Iraq, and that was one example.
Well, there were plenty of people for whom that was not okay.
No,
I was one of those.
No, of course not. But
okay, hold on, whoa, without getting into the detail. But all right, Nick, yeah, you. What about your take?
Well, I find the veterans very interesting when it comes to signals in politics. Looking at the most recent election, before the general election. The candidate who was actually receiving the most money overall from active duty military was actually Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate.
Right.
So it's a very interesting wrinkle, and it also goes back to 2012 when Ron Paul was receiving the most donations out of all the other candidates combined, including Obama. So I think that it does signal that there's a very non-interventionist vein that is active within the military, and maybe they're not the majority, but maybe they feel more strongly about it, and so they're willing to donate to political candidates that they support. So I find that pretty interesting, and a lot of the veterans that I've talked to and that I've interviewed, I've got several veterans in my family as well. They they believe in national defense and they believe in protecting the United States. But a lot of them have become disillusioned after going around into Iraq and, in Afghanistan, languishing in an endless war that has really no goal and no real way of winning. I think a lot of these guys have become disillusioned, so they were looking for a shakeup. I think everybody knew that Hillary Clinton was more of the same, if not even more hawkish in many ways than both Barack Obama and George W. Bush. So I think a lot of people
incredible. Just to cut in on that bit there, Nick, because it's incredible to me that a Democrat could be more hawkish than GOP for a start, but for someone, more hawkish than Bush. I mean, that just strikes me as remarkable.
It really is, because looking back at the candidacy of George W. Bush. If you look at the debates and stuff that he was in back in like 99 and 2000, man, he was a very non-interventionist candidate. I mean, he was running against Bill Clinton's nation building and all that stuff. So, Hillary Clinton, I think, was maybe one of the
He kind of changed his tune after 9/11.
Yeah, then he became a reality creator.
Yeah, it all changed
that
after 9/11, and he became the nation
I don't
builder.
like that. Sorry. Reality creator. He created a lot of reality. Sorry, Nick, carry on.
And so Hillary Clinton was probably the first major candidate in a pretty long time that was actually running on a hawkish platform. Now, she wasn't going around saying, I'm going to start a huge war with Russia and stuff, but basically the rhetoric and policies that she had, and of course, judging by her past record of, legislative record, I mean, Hillary Clinton was obviously much more hawkish than Donald Trump. And so I think that's partially why a lot of the military guys wound up voting for Trump over Clinton.
Chris, because in those debates, I remember there being this fascinating exchange, possibly the most fascinating of all the exchanges I saw in all the debates between Trump and Clinton, which was when she said, I want a no-fly zone over Syria. In other words, they could then fly over and, for whatever reason, there could be a plane shot down. And then we've triggered World War III, not just with Russia, but with China. She basically was saying that we could get into that scenario. Trump, when he responded, he said, no, we don't want anything like a no-fly zone. In fact, if anything, we want to pull out a bit. And we need to, really think, about what are we doing? Oh, blimey. So the Democrat supporters, they should be pleased that they've got somebody that's less of a warmonger, shouldn't they? Instead of sort of throwing their toys out of the pram.
They should, but I think that they wanted to win. I mean, essentially, I think that's what it came down to. Many people wanted their candidate to win, and I would make the argument
sectarian nonsense.
Right, but I think that just to back up one step, though, my point on the Hillary with the Iraq War vote was, I mean, there's different ways to look at that. Is one, she's one of several senators, of 100 senators. 2 times were different, all that stuff. But the point was, many people that supported Hillary Clinton were willing to overlook a vote in the United States Senate to authorize military force in a conflict that killed hundreds of thousands of people than they were for Donald Trump making a comment in a entertainment bus 10 years ago. So they're dedicated to, focusing on what they want to focus on. That was the only reason.
Distraction.
Right. That was a standalone point.
But it's a good point.
Chris?
Yes.
Chris, let me ask you, what do you think of Trump's military record so far with the botched raid into, was it Yemen that got a SEAL killed?
I think we're going to have to wait. I mean, we're going to have to wait and see are his military option selections. I mean, all of those raids.
He reckons it was leaked, doesn't he?
Well,
he says that the plans for the raid were leaked, and that somebody basically told ISIS or whoever it was that there was going to be a hit on their compound that night.
I think at some point he needs to take responsibility for whatever he's doing. I mean, he does have this way of sort of trying to angle things every which way. But one thing I think that Donald Trump had and Barack Obama had going in their favor politically is they just didn't have to vote or involve themselves with all these, decades of foreign policy that someone like Hillary Clinton or someone else has already been attached to. So it's easier for him to say, we need to get out of there and let the disaster play out. And I think that was the hard part about Hillary Clinton running 8 years after President Obama and after all of the Iraq War sentiments from 2003 and everything, it was just so politically hard to defend it. So she chose to do the sort of Donald Trump doesn't have the temperament to be president bit. And it just wasn't enough to overcome her unfavorables. And so now we are where we are. But, certainly I'm open to scrutinizing the things that have happened so far, except for one caveat. I do find him wildly entertaining. I mean, it's just such a different style.
Okay, come on. Give us come on then. He's marvelous,
Now,
isn't he? Chris?
That wildly entertaining is great in a reality TV star, but for the president of the United States of America, I'd prefer a little more boring and a few less deaths.
Yeah, but we had boring. We had boring with Obama, and it was not only boring, but it was really, really bad. I mean, he doubled the national debt. He went to war with Libya, Syria. Sorry, carry on.
I did say boring with less deaths.
Yeah,
that's kind of an important part of that statement.
Okay, fair enough.
But were there less deaths? That's the question. I mean, I don't know that there were less deaths. I mean, the drone bombings have continued. I mean, the thing and I just got to get my little jab in. I admit I did not vote for Barack Obama. I voted for Alan Keyes in U.S. Senate and then McCain and Romney. So I actually had him on the ballot 3 times.
McCain and Romney. Whoa.
Seriously?
Oh,
I did.
Yeah.
But for me,
granted,
yeah,
I'm not defending Obama in any way, shape, or form. He did things that should have got him impeached years ago. But Romney and McCain, are you kidding me?
At this point, wouldn't you rather have one of them?
Well,
no,
I don't know.
Because I'm looking at Trump
really?
and seeing what he's doing, putting Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State. Are you?
Come on, he sounds pretty sane, that guy. No, Nick, what do you think about Rex Tillerson?
Oh man, I find it interesting, and it goes back to this whole conversation about Trump, is that I think what Trump is doing is being more honest about what the government really does. And instead of going into Iraq and knocking over the government, pretending that we're liberating the country, when Trump puts a guy like Rex Tillerson in charge, we can be more honest, say, we're going to Iraq to take the oil. And, Trump has actually already said that kind of stuff.
So at least we'll be honest about it. And then
I don't agree with what most of the stuff that Trump is doing. But what I do find very interesting and maybe in some ways beneficial, at least to the public and our ability to know what's actually going on,
because
is that
then
Trump
we can
is
debate it.
less
Then we can
conniving
debate it.
and like Obama was so slick and he got away with almost everything. Trump is like, look, this is what's happening, and we're just going to be a little more honest about it. And people are like freaking out, even though this is the same stuff that's always gone on. It's just like, holy shit, now it's like laid bare.
It's like old Jimmy Dore says, he's putting an ugly face on the same policies that Obama put the charming face on.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah. Obama put half of the left to sleep because their guy was in charge. And now we've got Trump, who's going to be carrying out the same policies, but he won't be a left-winger. And so he's got the left riled up against him. So maybe we got that one saving grace in this whole mess. But it ain't going to be good.
Would it be fair to say then that Obama sort of hypnotized America with a smile and the wider world, and Trump, it's just he's kind of mesmerizing them with a desperation off the back of forever and a day politically, not just Obama.
If you can't dazzle him with dexterity, baffle him with bull.
Is it bull though? Is it bull? I don't think it is. I don't know. For me personally, the jury is out. I'm going to wait. I'm going to see his 100-day plan either come to fruition or not, and I'm going to check the boxes and cross out what he didn't do and do a tally. I mean, what else can you do? We don't actually have any choice, do we?
Chris, I mean, let me ask you. Has Trump not been on just about every single possible side of every single possible issue that he's ever talked about?
Next to Hillary Clinton, that might be true. I mean, he certainly has moved around on a lot of different things. Now, there's this argument that people evolve, but I think he has been, but he's also kind of been open about it. I mean, he's basically said, I was a business person. It was my job to get along with everybody. As far as his political positions, I mean, he's given these interviews over the decades, and they sort of move around from sort of social liberal to fiscal conservative. I think he has. But as far as this campaign and the lead up to this campaign in the last several years, it's been sort of fairly consistent. I mean, every single thing he said he's going to do, he's done. But I just want to give him credit for one thing. He is taking certain issues to the forefront no one ever takes forward. Immigration, inner cities. I mean, we have to admit, left, right, up, down, that when he brings up inner cities and in the debates, I thought it resonated when he said, listen.
I agree. I agree.
He said,
Carry
listen,
on.
he just said, African-American voters, give me a chance. He basically said, listen, it's been the same liberal inner city policies for the last several decades. And she's been sitting over here, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, where the hell have you been the last 30 years? If you were going to do it, why the hell didn't you do it in the last 30 years? And I think a lot of voters, it resonated because Hillary Clinton was reading the teleprompter, and it just didn't work for her because, the lack of authentic, concern, it just wasn't there. So, I mean, I think that's where Obama had the benefit is he actually did a lot of urban work. He didn't have a record of being hypocritical on those issues. And so, this sort of populism is coming forward now, I think, with Obama and Trump, where people just want to get away from the career politician when it comes to some of these elections.
Right. Well, I mean, we've had basically one party in this country on economic issues for a number of years now.
A duopoly.
But one thing, one party on economic issues.
Oh, okay. All right.
Pro-corporate, both sides of the aisle. That's just how it is.
Well, that is a duopoly, really, no? Gary?
No, because if both the Democrats and the Republicans are all pro-corporate.
Exactly. So you've got that's it. No, exactly. You've got an illusion of choice. Yeah, and it's pet to your coat.
Let me ask you about one promise that Trump did not keep. He promised to pay the legal bills of people who would assault protesters at his rallies, but I never heard of him actually paying for that. What do you think about that?
I would need to, if you could send me the links or clips. I'm sure. I don't doubt he said that. I mean, he said a lot of things. I don't remember.
Yeah,
that
right there on stage. Right there on stage. You said it. You
have you looked it up, Gary? Have you looked it up?
Pay your legal fees. I could pull up the video in 5 seconds.
At this point, I'm sure it's one of those things where, he would obviously get into public scrutiny if he did do it. I mean, I certainly think that a lot of that language I didn't find helpful at all. I mean, a lot of the things that he said were. I could certainly see where it's taking advantage of the hostilities. But again, here's the big issue, though. Out of all the media Trump warfare, so much of what he's saying does actually hit the dartboard. I mean, you have articles, and I think Olly and I may have discussed this, prior to the show today last week, which is just, there was a CNN story about urban strife, in light of some of these police action involved shootings, more forwardly stated. White police officer, African-American male, black, which results in a fatality. A lot of these issues have flared up. And you actually have a situation where you have a family member of one of the victims who is calling for rioting in the white suburbs, calling for violence. And CNN actually runs the story the exact opposite of what she was calling for and says she's calling for peace. And what did she say? Don't bring that here. That's where CNN cuts it. Bring it to the West. I mean,
I'll give you another example.
You can't give
Wait a minute. Chris, you're going to need some, Olly, I'm going to have to give Chris some pushback on this. This is not going to stand.
Okay, but before you do, another example, exactly the same thing.
It was exactly the opposite of the truth. Like that segment was exactly 100% the opposite of the truth, and so that's where he gets traction on some of the things he says.
But it's an angle on the story. I mean, he had Bibi in, didn't he, Netanyahu, and they had a bit of a chat, and all the the Clintonista sort of news network and all that lot, they were talking about. Oh, he's going along with Israel, so basically he's a thug. And then one or two other folks I've seen have reported that, but he said, look, I'm not saying anything either way, except you've got to get off the settlements. Or rather, no more settlement building. That is apparently, so That's another example. Okay, Gary, what's your comeback?
Oh, I'm just talking about. I'm giving pushback on to Chris's example of the woman calling for let's have actual riots in white neighborhoods, because the reason for that is that all of these deaths from police officer involved shootings are happening outside of white suburbs. And the only way to really bring people's attention to the injustice of massively disproportionate deaths among black men in this country and black women, possibly even more so, is to bring that directly into the neighborhoods of the white people in this country, who are the majority and who are generally too busy to pay attention to realize that this is such a huge problem in this country.
Not only that, but the incarceration as well. So, three counts, 3 strikes and you're out. But that's just been, Nick, I mean,
which Hillary Clinton supported.
Yeah. And her husband implemented.
You're not going to hear any defense of Hillary Clinton on this show. That's not going to happen, Chris. Don't worry about that.
No. We don't do that. Sorry. Yeah, she's lovely. I mean, anyway.
Olly has such a fragile stomach. So fragile. Those Brits, you know how they are.
Yeah, or Tony Blair or.
Now, I just wanted to do one more quick thing on that particular case, and by the way, hopefully I'll be able to impersonate Trump later, because I've just been itching. I've been itching to do it.
Yeah, I do it, man.
I do stand-up comedy on the side. I don't get paid for it, but it's fun. But one more thing on that though.
I tell you, he doesn't get paid for it. I know.
And here's my thing too. You hear people criticizing groups like Black Lives Matter. You won't hear me criticize it, because I think the message is important. I don't like the tactics, but I understand the message. But here's 2 caveats to that issue about the white suburbs. 1, I hope they go to the limousine liberal communities in Hollywood as well. And 2, the fact is, more police involved shootings involve white men. Now, you look at proportionate to the black community, got it. But here comes the caveats. Increased crime rate, increased fatherless households, and then we go down that whole laundry list. And I don't want to be cliche about,
now, hold on, Chris. You talk about the increased fatherless households, but let me ask you this. Which comes first? Economic
the chicken or the egg?
No, Olly. Hush. Which comes first? Economic stability or getting married?
I would say economic stability.
What about depression? When does that come in?
As far as I'm confused with the question.
What I'm saying is, when people have economic stability, that's when they get married and have families that they can support properly. When people are economically unstable, they can't afford to throw a party and get married and buy a house and all of that sort of thing. So that's why I get really tired of these arguments.
That's because they haven't got a job. Because they've got a fixed term contract, which is apparently, going into the figures for employment or whatever, which is a bit of a joke. And then they've got 3 or 4 of those fixed term contracts, to get basically a single income.
And here's the good news. I think we're all actually interested in making this issue better. This isn't. I'm just not going to give you all the, sort of devil's advocate counter talking points, because I don't find it useful. But I think the biggest issue is education, the education system, and that's hard because it's not so easy just to say put in more money, because you also have representatives of Congress or African American leaders in the states that are these big leaders, and they turn out to be total phonies. Jesse Jackson Jr., a phony who essentially rips off his constituents, gets a light prison term. You got the Illinois governor, Rod Blagojevich, gets 14 years for corruption. And then Jesse Jackson Jr. gets essentially, I think, 2 or 3 years. He even had his prison moved because he wasn't adjusting well. And so, that's a one-off. I don't want to discredit, leadership in the African American community because of one particular individual, but he's pretty high profile. I mean, his father, Jesse Jackson, the civil rights leader. So I feel like, we do got to come together and figure out what to do. And I don't think that the president is connecting with the African American community on the level he should, but looking at a new approach, I think should at least be looked at, and have all this pushback from the Democrats of, well, we can't send in the National Guard and all these things. Well, I think that's might be a little heavy-handed, but the South Side of Chicago is incendiary violence. I mean, I don't know where we start, right?
Nick, what do you think about this, mate? Come on in.
All right, what was that?
Well, I'm sorry. We lost you there, didn't we? We lost you. We got into a loop. But basically, what do you think about what's going on with the protesting, and the I'll tell you what absolutely amazes me is the lack of awareness of these students I watched these protests in Berkeley at the uni there, and I know, of course, the vast majority of them they're absolutely fine. They're protesting. They're perfectly normal, and it's perfectly right. And damn it, I'd fight for your right to protest, whether I agree with you or not. But then there's a load of these folks, and the irony of them, I mean, looking like fascists, really, lighting cars and vandalizing, bricks through shop windows and stuff like that. Where is the... There's a lot of talk at the moment. Whoa, Gary. There's a lot of talk at the moment, for example, about satire, the rise of satire with Trump. And I personally think that's brilliant, because anything to do with that, if you can bring about awareness in easier ways, sugarcoat the pill, that kind of thing. Well, that's kind of what we try to do a bit here, but that's great. But these kids are just using violence, mindless violence. That is not going to work. These kids, Nick, I mean, they seem a bit dim. What they need a refund. They really?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I'm actually in California, where these Berkeley protests were going on, and my little brother went to that college as well. It's a different world up there.
Great college.
It's such an interesting phenomenon to see the reaction to. I mean, of course, these protests weren't against Trump, but they all fall kind of into the same category. And to me, it really kind of just shows the extreme disconnect between different groups of people in this country, in the United States, because it's a huge place and a huge population, and the argument could be made that people over here where I'm at on the West Coast are almost completely in a different country than the people over on the East Coast.
Where are you? Where are you based?
I'm down in San Diego, California. Which is
lovely. Yeah. Of course you are.
Southwest of California. And so to me, it really is just really curious to see how this is all playing out. I think a lot of it is just a bunch of tantrums going on because some of these people are mad that, Hillary Clinton didn't win. But on the other hand, there are some people who are not Clinton supporters who are out there upset. I mean, a lot of them maybe supported Bernie Sanders as well. So there's a disconnect, and people are getting a little bit frustrated with the government in general. I think doing things that they don't agree with. It's really hard to have a country this size and still try to run it as a democracy or a republic, because then inherently you're going to have the issue where, if let's say you want to start deporting people, well, if half the people agree with that and the other half don't, well, then you're going to have an issue, because half the people are going to be out protesting you and starting riots or whatever. I don't know. It's a really interesting phenomenon to see how long we can go as a huge country with all these people, and see how long they could try to hold it together. The feeling I get is that the social fabric in the United States it's starting to come apart, and this would have been happening whether Hillary Clinton won or whether Donald Trump had won. It just seems like the country is drifting apart, and that maybe the next thing that's going to happen is that the U.S. goes back to its roots, which is more of a federalist type of system, where the states are really like little countries, and the federal government is a very weak, watered down kind of glue that holds it all together. Because right now there's this worry now, ironically coming from the left, about executive orders, and they're like, wow, well, maybe the president shouldn't be so strong. Maybe they shouldn't be able to just write a executive order and affect our lives like that. The funny thing is that the people on the left were actually praising it under Obama, but now that it's Trump, it's like, oh my God, he's going to, write another executive order. So, there's obviously a bunch of hypocrisy there and all that.
Man,
but I think that the big thing is that it really is hard for a country this size to be managed by one guy or just one set of government.
Nick, you're right, mate. Look, we're going to have a break up here. I'll tell you what, we're going to come straight back on that. Hold that thought. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about the rounding up the migrants and stuff and kind of take it from there. But wow, this is good, really good. Thank you very, very much. We got Chris Neiweem here and Nick Bernabe with old Gary and me. And, there you go. We'll just, take a pee, whatever. Back in a couple of minutes. Yeah, indeed. Well, that's us back. I was going to do some cheering, but it didn't work. And who cares? Yes, we're here with Chris Neiweem and Nick Bernabe, Gary Branson. I'm Olly Connolly. You're listening to Jingly-Jangly. This is Revolution Radio. And you know what? If you do like what you're listening to and you want to give us a bit of a hand, because it costs a few quid to keep this thing on the air, and we don't get paid. We do this, because we care, frankly, and enjoy it because it's bloody good fun. And it's great to learn and to share, sharing, caring, all that. But so Revolution Radio does all that. And there's a lot of stuff on here, so check it out on the site, on the schedule. And if you do want to donate, please do. Please do. And if you want to subscribe, that's only $5 a month, $4.95, something like that. And you can get all the shows, big archive, and there's some great stuff there. Really, really good stuff. Not just our stuff on Jingly, but the whole network. So check that out on freedomslips.com. There's a bit of a plug. And back to our guest, because we were talking, Nick, about, well, we've been talking generally about the more, I suppose, in a way, the positive side of Trump. In a way, some of the things that maybe he could do that maybe were less threatening in terms of global security. Well, basically to stave off World War III. I thought, the juxtaposition between his policy and that of, say, Hillary Clinton's. But on the other hand, domestically, it's apart from being hectic with this kind of judge saying you can't do this ban from these 7 countries. Apart from that, there also, as I understand it, there's a lot of migrants who are being rounded up and pushed over the border now, and that is going on. Is that the case?
Now,
yeah, we've been seeing reports from about 6 states so far of immigration roundups, but I'm not sure that they're new. I'm not sure that they're new policies because of Trump, or if they were actually already scheduled. I've seen conflicting reports there. I mean,
right.
The fact of the matter is that Obama deported more people than I think any other president in U.S. history. Not to say that.
Really?
Oh,
yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
He was known as the deporter in chief. Oh yeah.
Well, hold on. He invited everybody in. He kind of did a Merkel, really, didn't he?
No.
Yeah, he really had everyone fooled, man. I mean, I of course, there's varying opinions on this immigration debate. But according to some reports, Obama deported up to like 3 million immigrants. Not to say that Trump isn't.
So hold on a sec. That completely undermines a huge chunk of Trump's entire campaigning.
Yeah,
it really does, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does, but the thing is that Trump's arguments were so emotionally rooted that it didn't really matter if they were factual or not. People believe them because they sound really good. They make sense. Like they make emotional sense. Although, of course, looking, I study. I'm very libertarian in my view of economics, and I look at immigration as a net positive on economy and stuff. Other people see it as, okay, immigrants are coming and taking people's jobs and stuff. So there's, several different ways to look at it. But if you don't know that much about how economies work and supply and demand and labor and all the other factors that go into it, it makes sense that we should start deporting people so that other people can take those jobs.
Yeah, that was the Rust Belt argument, basically.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah, and
partly, and also the trade side as well was the other half of that.
That argument, it feels so good that it didn't matter if it was already happening and not really working, because Obama deported more people than any previous president, but The real economy, sure, Wall Street rebounded, but the real economy stayed stagnant. And that's why Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump resonated with the people over in the Rust Belt, the manufacturing base, because the economy didn't actually recover. We were told that it recovered, and the data, they manipulate the data to make it look like it recovered, and Wall Street recovered. But the average working person in the United States is extremely hungry right now and looking for answers. So when you come along and say, yeah, we're going to deport people and build a big wall and that's going to fix the economy, well, people tend to believe that kind of stuff. But it's probably not.
It's not. Work. It has to be said. It's not just about jobs, is it? It's also about national security and screening migrants.
Well,
yeah, definitely. They say
fear-based obsession with national security. Anyway, I mean, how many actual attacks have happened from people coming through where we would build a wall, compared to, say, attacks that happen here on a day-to-day basis?
Very hard to know. I mean, how did the Boston bombers get in? Were they allowed, actually, for that matter? They were another, just a bit of an aside here, but they were another case of, we've been tracking them for years. Oh, by the way, we didn't pull them in. I mean, for all we know, they were mind controlled. What do you think about this, Chris?
Well, first I wanted to take a step back and say, I mean, Nick's commentary was perfect before we did the break. I mean, I've never heard a more sort of clear assessment of exactly what's happening politically in the States right now. I mean, we are the United States of America, but I would definitely say we are the united but highly politically disagreeable states of America. I mean, if you look at the Electoral College, every election cycle, we pick a president because we're divided. I mean, we only compete for those electoral, those swing states, so to speak. So it's sort of interesting that, elections are actually decided because of all those divisions. So it's very interesting, and I tend to agree with that entire assessment. My only add-on would be that, I have a lot of very liberal friends. Most of my friends are probably on the left, but I lose consciousness with political debate when we start getting to the point of the blocking traffic, the disrupting other people's lives right after an election type of thing, because a lot of the movement has
Such as what? Well,
I mean,
you're talking about literally the ban that he tried to impose that was overturned.
Well, there have been a few different flashpoints. Go ahead.
Yeah. Chris, what was your opinion about Occupy Wall Street?
I thought that Occupy Wall Street was. I thought there was a valid message. I don't think they were very effective. My only interaction with Occupy Wall Street was in 2011. I just moved to Washington, D.C. I was heading to work. I was wearing a suit and tie, and there was a man that said something about lock Dick Cheney up for treason type thing. And I asked him, I said, why don't you focus on the enemy once in a while? And he called me a effing fascist and all this stuff. And I told him, I'm a veteran. You actually have your freedom to be out here because of me. Cheers. So for me, like, these movements are just so fanatically left, at least the external, like the mouthpieces, that it turns me off, right? Like, I respect their right to be there, but I mean, I saw this on inauguration night. I mean, I get it. And then we get into the sort of politics of, well, that's a one-off, that's a fringe. And we see that with the Trump people and with the sort of the protesters. Well, the really bad people, those are just the fringe. But, I feel like there's a lot of bad stuff in all of these sort of political movements sometimes, and we just have to sort of, call it what it is. But I certainly understand the sort of concern about Wall Street. And I personally feel as though corporations should pay their fair share of taxes and all those sorts of things. And I think also the federal government should spend less money. But the one thing about the United States that I have to say, and as a small business owner, is you can win financially if you take certain steps. And I honestly feel as though when it comes to business and it comes to efficiency, I've seen the incentive model work really well. I think that the big caveat always is, and the big elephant is, the greed. Greed does not really do really good for anybody. So it's sort of, there's contrasting sort of ways to look at things. But I've been babbling. I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: is greed inherent to the human psyche?
Gordon Gekko certainly would say so. I mean, I think that.
Would you say so? That's what I'm really wondering.
He's a soldier.
Yeah,
not an economist.
I'm a no, but
But he's a human being.
He's a human being.
He
Fair enough.
understands the world. Come on.
Let's
Tell
be
me,
honest,
Chris.
Ollie. Ollie, I'm
Alrighty.
very good. I'm very good
Well,
at
you
very many
mentioned
things. Okay, I'm good at many things.
You mentioned greed being the problem with these incentive structures, but is greed pretty unavoidable in the human condition?
I do. I mean, I think people inevitably want to take, and if you just look at sort of the millennial generation we're in now, I mean, everyone sort of has that look at me, pay attention to me. So I think there's always going to be that people are always going to want a little bit more. That's natural. I mean, it's sort of like dessert. It's like, oh, the cheesecake tasted good. I want a little bit more.
Whoa! Hold on here. I mean, we're looking at the millennial generation as being the first generation in American history to have a lower standard of living than their parents, because of the greed of those who came before. I mean, we got Wall Street crashing the economy left and right and setting up to do it again. And Trump is currently putting forth executive orders. Now, they probably aren't going to stand, but he does have a Congress to back him up on this, to remove all the Dodd-Frank protections and all the restrictions on Wall Street that prevented them for a long time from crashing the economy. And he's setting them up to do it again.
Hold on. Whoa. There's another side to that, though, isn't there? That is that some of those restrictions that were brought in off the back of 2008 by the Obama administrations were actually good ways for corporations to kind of hide behind shadows and stuff like that. What do you think about this, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how the corporate kind of state, I guess you could say, just kind of, it just evolves slowly between the different candidacies and the different players. I mean, if you look at Trump's recent pick for Treasury Secretary, man, this is where, I find some very interesting.
We'd rather not.
Is that Jamie Dimon?
No, Rex Tillerson. Oh wait, no, sorry.
No, he's state. Who?
Oh yeah, who was it?
It's a guy named Mnuchin, and
Steve Mnuchin.
Steve Mnuchin. Yeah.
Former Goldman Sachs, but even more interesting, former partner of George Soros, which is a longtime enemy of the right.
That's right.
So it's like, the figureheads change, but I think there's a much bigger machinery behind the scenes, a corporate machinery.
So you think that he could be a Trojan? Sorry, Nick. You think? Well, you're saying there that he could be a Trojan, that he's just more military industrial. That's the suggestion.
Kind of, yeah, kind of. But
he's fighting against shadow government. He hasn't used that phrase shadow government that I've heard, but he has used what was it? The big state. I think the deep state. The deep state he talks about. Same thing, no?
Yeah. It's the deep state, but I don't know, man. It's really hard to go up against that. So on one hand, you saw Trump kind of criticizing Saudi Arabia during the primaries and the general. Right. And then now you see him kind of rubbing elbows with them, sealing weapons deals with them, and working with them to deal with Syria. Many people know that ISIS is maybe at least partially an outgrowth of Saudi Arabian policies and stuff. So it's hard to, on one hand, say you're going to be tough on terrorism and you're going to, right the wrongs that have been done on foreign policy. And then shortly after getting elected, you go and meet up with Saudi Arabia, sell them more arms. And, we all know those arms are probably ending up in the hands of guys like ISIS. I think it's really tough to overcome that deep state, no matter how much you want to go in there and change things up. I think Obama wanted to go and change things up as well. And I forget who it was. Someone on the call today was kind of comparing how, talking about how both Trump and Obama were kind of like these populist candidates. I think there's a lot more in common between the two than we'd like to admit. But I think you come in and then you want to do a bunch of stuff.
To be populist candidates anyway. They both had good populist sentiment in their speeches, but when it came time to actually make decisions, I didn't see much from Obama, and I'm not seeing much from Trump. I mean, you say that it's hard to go against the deep state, but that's why we give people the amount of power that we give them, is to try to get them the power they need to take on the deep state, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think that's what's supposed to be happening. But there's something getting in the way. I don't know what it is exactly. But it's I think it's really hard for people, especially for a president, to go in and try to single-handedly shake things up, because it's a dangerous task, really, going up against something that we see happening now.
Didn't do much good for JFK, did it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. You see what's going on right now with Trump, and the intelligence community is really going after him, and they just took down Flynn, which was one of his chief advisors. Right now, I think they're giving him the treatment, like, here you go, dude. Like, here's either you listen to us or we're going to keep doing what we're doing to you. And if you listen to us, we're going to back off. If you don't, we're going to make your life a living hell, and we're probably going to wind up getting you impeached or whatever it is. They're going to do something, because these guys have the power. The NSA has dirt on everybody. They could, if they wanted Trump impeached, I'm sure they could probably do it. So
that's why we got to shut them down really hard, is because we've given them way too much power. I mean, they're looking at the things that we're typing into search bars while we're typing them, if Snowden is to be believed. And
they certainly take the metadata and store it, and then they can check up on whoever comes on their list. Mm-hmm. They're doing that.
Whether it's their ex-girlfriends or people who owe them money, or
it's not even necessarily email data or what have you, although it is too. But even you go online and for example, personally, I use a VPN, to try and be a bit anonymous, to have a bit of privacy, not because I've really got anything to hide, but it's the principle of the thing. But even with that, I imagine that they can unscramble, and I have no idea whether or not my particular VPN is in cahoots with them. I don't know. It says in the small print, no, but does that really mean anything? And if you do assume that they can unscramble the data, and for most people they don't use a VPN or whatever anyway, no proxy, and then they've got a fingerprint. So you come online and you've got your tabs open, all your home tabs, about 10 tabs. For me, for example, it's all the local rags, it's the national press, whatever, so that I can get an idea of what's going on. And then they know they've got a fingerprint. That is like a password as soon as you go on. But I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that they can find out about you. And then when they know who you are, then they can track you, where you go from there, where you surf from there. It's a huge worry, no? Does this sort of thing concern you? You guys.
Well, here's something that our listeners can do to fight that sort of thing. What we need to have is a lot larger percentage of the population encrypting everything that they do. Because
but even that, I'm not sure that
the feds can break any encryption that you care to name.
Yeah.
If they've got the time and manpower to focus on
not necessarily.
encryption.
No, not necessarily. If they're in cahoots with the VPN, they can do it in real time. They can, near as damn it.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if we're encrypting everything that we do from our end, before it even goes to the VPN, before just encrypt everything that gets from your computer. And if everybody would do that, then it would be an awful lot harder, even for the NSA with all of their vast resources, to decrypt everything, because it takes a certain amount of computing power to decrypt encryption. And if it's
that's right. They need the key. They need to know.
The way we fight that aspect of the state. We got to have
this is a worry. So is this something that you've thought about much, Chris? About privacy, basically.
Sure.
Post 9/11, really, isn't it? I mean, we've had our liberty taken away from us. This is one of the things that I would have liked to have heard Trump talking more about in the campaign. Is the giving us back our liberty. It's all very well getting rid of terrorism, but we were sold on this war on terrorism, and we now know that it's a crock of nonsense. But on the other hand, the other side of that coin was that we lost so much liberty fighting this terrorism, this supposed terrorism, which, you know, we kind of drummed up. And we need that back.
Sure. I mean, it concerns me the same as it concerns the next citizen. I mean, I think that it's one of those tricky things, right? It's a liberty versus security. And when you look at our freedom, I would really rather have the government not involved in any of that. I mean, I've never been sort of warm to police officers per se, because to me, it's, you know, everyone always says growing up, oh, you know, you always got to do what the police say. I'm kind of a constitutional kind of Ron Paul guy when it comes to that. It's kind of like, no, they're actually there to try to, you know, fine you, take your money, you know, police how fast you drive your vehicle, and they're there, to, you know, they're never really there when you need them.
And advise and help you as well, you know, what serve and protect.
Exactly. But on the other hand, I think, you know, you look at some sort of major attack, or let's just internally think about maybe sort of a terrible sort of attack that could happen at the local level, and let's just say it involves some sort of, you know, terror element. The first thing we're going to ask ourselves is, why weren't the police able to do X, Y, and Z? And if they can't come back and say that they had certain tools to do it, and it's one of those unpleasant tasks, like you need to have the power to do things. So I think it really comes down to sort of the judicial orders. I'd like to see a judge. I'd like to see a government set up where there's independent commissions that have absolutely zero connection to the executive branch, because again, sort of like the Snowden stuff, my concern is sort of storing everything at all time. For example, if I'm having a conversation that warrants some sort of inquiry, I would assume that would be looked at. But do I need to have, be running for, Congress in 10 years and have some opponent of mine essentially tap into some government data bank and, let's just listen to every conversation he's ever had the last 20 years and then be using that for other purposes and for nefarious purposes when there's absolutely zero accountability of what those people are doing. So, we all watch movies, and that kind of stuff is frightening. So I would say I'm just as concerned as the next person about those things.
You touched on Snowden there. Sorry, Gary, you carry on, mate. You ask, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, I've been giving you a lot of pushback today, but I am absolutely with you on the police thing. The police have been out of control in this country with the power that we've given them since 9/11 and prior to that. And it has just been getting worse and worse and worse as they become more and more militarized.
And they're taking money, and he's helping that, isn't he? Yeah. Now Trump said, "What's that thing called?"
Oh yeah, and the asset forfeiture. Yeah, the asset forfeiture stuff.
Something forfeiture. Is that what it's called? Asset forfeiture.
It's civil asset forfeiture.
There you go.
Where they say, "Yeah, you have this car, but I think you bought it with drug money, so I'm going to seize it, and now it's incumbent upon you to make the case to get your car back."
And they can nick the money out of your wallet. No. I mean, it really is just basic.
Coming home from Vegas,
it's highway robbery,
back to LA or Texas or whatever, and they can literally rob you on the highway.
Nick, literally, this is an indictment on the land of the free, isn't it? This is.
Yeah, man. Civil asset forfeiture is probably one of the most egregious things that the government does. I mean, I was just 2 years ago, I was taking a flight from Philadelphia back to Los Angeles, and the guy that was sitting next to me had a run-in with the who was it? I think it was like the DEA or something, and they just confiscated $10,000 from him at the airport just because he had it in cash. And they said, "Well, we suspect you could be using this for drug money." And they took it from him. And, when they do that, a lot of times you don't get it back because it's up to you to go to court. And if you don't have a good lawyer and stuff, I mean, they could just take your money and never charge you with the crime. It's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, they charge your money with a crime. It's crazy. In fact, I think it was Ohio 2 or 3 years ago that there was some young kid who was dealing heroin to his friends, and the cops busted him and seized his parents' house because they found $40 worth of heroin on their son.
How is that possible? That sounds like something out of Stalin Russia. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
Land of the free, seizing the home of the brave.
I find it incredible that that Trump endorses that any Republican would endorse that anybody would endorse that. Chris, what is your take on that?
Well, lucky for me, I never have any money after I make my IRS payments. So hopefully, I probably won't be carrying $10,000 cash anytime soon. But
you should have a more successful small business then, huh?
yeah, that's true. But that's
more backhanders.
But it's the first quarter, so we're doing okay. We're coming back strong now. But no, I would say that all that stuff concerns me. I mean, sort of the reach of government, and I feel like when people really feel it is when they really start to have those viewpoints, and that's where I've always weighed pretty heavily my foreign policy and sort of veteran views because they come from a more of a practical perspective. And when some of these, fortunately, I don't have the practical perspective because I haven't dealt with those seizures, but I think that the power of government is concerning, and I feel like that's where earlier it was said there's a one-party system with the corporate environment, and I would
two-headed snake.
Two-headed snake, and I mean just musically, just sort of a one-off. I'm a big Megadeth fan, and this is a metal band that's had many political sort of views over the decades that are very sort of in that shadow government space, especially the last few records.
Megadeth. Yeah.
Megadeth. Well, they just want to. Yeah, they
Chris,
just want to.
Do you like any music from the last 20 years?
Or
everything from the 80s and before?
Well, the 80s and before. But
he's a big Britney Spears fan. I heard.
Listen. Megadeth just won a Grammy for Best Metal Artist for Dystopia, which came out in 2016. The whole theory of the album is that the shadow government is essentially taking over all the corners of society, and we have robotic police running around, sort of like the concept for the film Minority Report, where the government actually charges you with a crime before it happens.
I'll have to check that out. All right.
Yeah, cool. No, I bring that up just to sort of illustrate the theory that the government sort of the development of government has been concerning for many of people's sort of privacy. And I think the next phase of that will be cyber. When we look at our social media, it's kind of frightening how much information we all just put out there. So it'll be interesting to see.
It is. Yeah. Oh, hello. Everybody's gone quiet.
All right.
Are you still there, guys?
It's time for me to give a little more pushback then, because I'm the pushback guy on this show.
We don't know what else to say. There's nothing else to say. I'll tell you what. Gary, let's wrap the show up. We clearly haven't got anything else to say. It's a quiet news week anyway. Oh man, I'll tell you what.
Anyhow, something I was going to say before the break last hour was, Nick, I got to give you some pushback on something you were saying earlier, talking about the protests in Berkeley. You mentioned the term tantrums, and this is something I noticed an awful lot being referred.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, that kind of terminology gets flung at the left an awful lot.
It does.
Well deserved.
Not always.
Then again,
but a lot of genuine Democrats are being let down by a bunch of it. Sorry, carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. Now then we've also got the y'all Qaeda guys up at the Mall who are refuge taking over federal land with armed militia.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But they get shot though. But doesn't the federal government usually shoot them?
Well, they didn't at Bundy, did they?
On camera. We saw the video.
I wanted to ask you about Bundy, guys. I wanted to ask you, all of you, about that. Carry on, Gary. Carry on. Try and pop that in.
All these other minorities that get shot all the time, choked out, what have you. I've been keeping track of this for a couple of years now, just in my casual time, and I've come up with like 800 plus quote unquote isolated incidents from these quote unquote bad apple cops just in the last couple of years in my spare time. So the cops thing is a problem in this country, but I really want to give some serious pushback to this mentality of describing protesters on the left who are just simply getting tired of graduating college with $60,000 in debt and having a $9 an hour job as the only thing that's available to them in their town. Fathers competing against their sons for a job at Walmart. And I hear people describing the people who finally get fed up and lift their voice in protest and maybe just get a little bit more upset than, hey, can I please have this solved? They get called childish and like they're throwing temper tantrums.
We're not helping, are we? We're kind of fueling each other's, angst.
Exactly.
Because we're annoying. Both sides. I mean, I don't know. I try to be in the middle, and I think a lot of folks do. I try to be balanced and at least to listen to both sides. And I'm certainly not sectarian. I despise sectarian politics. But it seems to me we've got to give this guy a chance. But irrespective of whether you agree with that or not, we are antagonizing each other. Everybody is antagonizing each other at the moment. It's extraordinarily divisive time. We've so got to put that to bed somehow. It doesn't look as though that's going to happen anytime soon.
I mean, it's not really the real struggle in this country is not between the left and the right. It's between the 99.
People think it is. People tend to think it is. A lot of people
wrong. It's between the 99% and the 1%.
Well, I agree. I agree with you. Yeah,
Rich people and poor people, because that's what's really causing all of the problems that give us stress in our lives, that make us lash out at each other, is the fact that the extremely wealthy and powerful in this country are hoovering up all the resources and leaving us to squabble over the scraps. And we need to cut it out.
I totally agree with most of what you said. When I made that statement, I said some of these people were throwing a tantrum, but not all of them. What I mean by that really is that there's some people out there just protesting because Hillary Clinton lost. That's not all of them, but that's some of them. But what I was saying is that there's very real reasons I think people are out there protesting, because the politics in this country, though they are very similar, like you said. I mean, really the struggle is more of a class struggle than it is a partisan one. But the politics have grown so far. There's such a wide ocean of difference between them, at least rhetorically speaking, and the perceived difference, that it's going to be really hard, I think, for any reconciliation to actually happen. And I've been seeing this California exit movement, the secession movement, and the one before that, which was really taking off in Texas, as very interesting signs that maybe the idea of decentralizing is becoming popular again. And I really see all these protests as kind of symptomatic of this idea that people are starting to look more towards self-determination and less towards a federal government that's trying to oversee 330 million people. So I don't know. It's just a really interesting mix of elements here. And the other thing too is, like in Berkeley in particular, I mean, a lot of the protesters that were making news were the anti-fascist kind of black bloc people. And those people are not Hillary Clinton supporters, and I don't think those people are throwing a tantrum by any means. Those people do the same thing for Hillary Clinton. They do the same thing at the NATO meetings. Like they do it regardless.
They did the same thing in the NAFTA protests up in Oregon and the Seattle NAFTA protests, for example. Yeah.
I don't think those people are throwing tantrums. I think that's just their tactic. That's their tactic. That's how they express their political.
Why don't they use art or sing a song or non-compliance? Just sit down and not get up. I mean, really.
Ollie, have you ever Googled pepper spray cop?
Oh yeah, that's a point. Yeah, okay, that is a good argument.
The UC Davis protest where they did sit on the sidewalk.
You got away with it.
Came along with the Costco-sized can of pepper spray.
You got arrested, didn't you?
Hosed them down.
How many times?
I was in Tucson. I got arrested 13 times in Tucson. We didn't get pepper sprayed.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. You had your chickens with you, and it was animal cruelty or something. No,
it was just a more civil protest than that. We're like, yeah,
So,
okay.
there you go. A civil protest. Exactly. I mean, if it's in a university, actually, it has happened, though, hasn't it? There was a protest. I seem to remember the video about, this a couple of years ago now, nothing to do with Trump. And these guys, maybe it was to do with Trump, but it was in the election campaigning. And these guys, they were pepper sprayed at the uni. And they were just sat down doing nothing.
It was a protest over the increasing cost of college, is what that was about.
Which is a pretty reasonable protest, whether you agree or not.
Yeah, exactly. And the cops just come along and hosed them down.
That was under Obama. Just to be, it happens under both, sides, or can do. We haven't seen. Well,
Olly, let me jump in on caveat that just the average person living in America is still in the top 1% of global wealth. So, I mean, the reason people aren't traditionally rioting in the streets is because they're just pretty much content. And then we can look at the philosophy behind that, whether it's quiet desperation or just sort of, they're just happy watching television. But so just wanted to put that caveat in there in the sense that, compared to global wealth, they're doing okay. But I would largely agree with pretty much the whole context of what Nick laid out. I mean, I think that it's a good time for everyone to turn to sort of the self-determination and look at that, because how ironic is it that, you got the left that's more energized than they've been in years, and President Obama is getting ready to take his net worth from 8 million probably to 26 million, working on his next book deal, and he's sitting, he was sitting on a luxurious island with this American billionaire.
But it was with Richard Branson, wasn't it?
Right, water skiing. He's having a good time.
Yeah.
So he's not struggling. He's not. He's the least bit worried about.
He was actually kite surfing, and he was trying not to run over any boat people that he created from Libya that Richard Branson obviously had invited to Necker Island.
So it is an interesting, but I think that the focus folks should look at is just the self-determination, articulating the point. I think both sides of the spectrum could sometimes articulate the point a little bit better, but I certainly I'd say I've had a lot of good opportunities in my life, but I've also said, I've seized a lot of opportunities. I mean, I enlisted in the Army, no one forced me. I went to Iraq, survived, came back. I went to college and realized that, I think I'm going to need to move across the country and take a job in a mailroom somewhere, which I did. And then 4 years later, now it's like, Monday night, I'm on Fox News, so how did that happen? I guarantee you that did not happen because of, white privilege or all these other sort of labels that happened. It happened because I positioned myself again and again and again for some of those opportunities. And it's been sort of the self-determination lens. And so I think that, both what Gary and Nick were saying is both very interesting, but I think that the sooner we can kind of dig more into sort of the weeds of each one of these issues and parse things apart, we'll actually probably find more agreeable ground there than just sort of looking at the the television headlines.
We'll come straight back to that. Now, I know that Nick's got to go, so I just want to say a big cheers. Thank you so much for coming on, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a good time. I got to get some work done, so I got to get going, but I'd love to come back on, and I have a radio show as well. If anybody wants to be a guest on my show, please hit me up. We talk about all kinds of similar things, really, and
love to talk more for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We will. I mean, fantastic. Really, really good to build bridges with you. And Nick, just tell us again, please, how people can. Well, it's the Anti-Media. It's the antimedia.com. That's without a hyphen.
.org. .org.
Mm-hmm. Yep, the antimedia.org. Just go to our site, sign up, and help us create this. Help us create the news and find out which stories are important. Really, just go to our site. You can find us there, and we're on all the other social media platforms as well. I don't even like mentioning them anymore, but just go to our site, check out our front page, and submit articles to us. Upvote, downvote. Let us know what's important. That's pretty much it. Thank you for having me on, man. I enjoyed talking to you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Nick. God bless you, mate. And yeah, I certainly will, and I know Gary will, because he's a fan, and that's terrific. Nick Bernabe, the Anti-Media, and Gary, I didn't know that you were such a big fan of Nick's, mate. I didn't know that.
Oh, for a long time. Oh yeah, he was one of the earlier alternative news sources beyond the big four ridiculous propaganda machines that you just can't trust anymore, which ironically are the ones who are putting forth the fake news narrative.
So hold on, who are they?
Huh?
Who are they? Well, you mean the CNNs and all that?
Yeah, CNN, NBC,
Yeah, ABC, blah, blah, blah.
MSNBC, Fox.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, but Fox is definitely the least trustworthy out there.
Hey, it's a boon for business. Well, I tell you what, though, I think people choose the media that has their political view. I mean, if someone wants to watch MSNBC, they're going to get a liberal narrative, and Fox is going to have a conservative narrative. But I would say, no one ever says this.
Neoliberal narrative anyway.
A neoliberal, but Fox does have liberal guests on pretty much every single segment. So I think that's a caveat. But I do have one secret surprise for you guys I didn't tell you that I think will make this even more interesting is I have a brother. I only have one brother. My brother is an anarchist, and he's been a long-standing activist, anarchist / he's many things. I'll tell you that. Give his name a Google. Same last name, first name Mark. He was arrested for terrorism.
Spell your surname, because it's people. It was go on.
N like November, Eiweem like Mike, Neiweem, Neiweem. My first name is Chris. There's a pretty good sort of public record of me with my work in Congress. My brother's first name is Mark. Arrested in 2012 for protesting NATO in Chicago. Was arrested and charged with terrorism. And the charges were later essentially sort of pled down. He ended up going to prison. And the whole reason I bring this up is because I think that both narratives, the anarchist ACLU narrative, he was defended by ACLU attorneys, and he had obviously the prosecutors in the state of Illinois prosecuting him. I think that they were all completely wrong. I think the truth was somewhere in the middle. I think that he was it was entrapment. They had alluded that he was trying to build an explosive and all these things. Completely false. There was no explosive. There was no conspiracy to have explosive. It was nothing more than law enforcement infiltrating the group and essentially entrapping them. And the law enforcement officers undercover were actually the ones that were encouraging these wacky ideas. Never came to fruition. But then on the other hand, you have people that look at him as this victim, and he was known as the one of the NATO 5 and all this. He's an idiot. And let me just tell you, the whole black, the total black bloc people, as far as them being, they are consistent. But I'll tell you what, majority of those people should probably have tattoos of Lyndon Baines Johnson on their rear end, because they're big government-loving liberals that live at home, that collect government benefits. Because my brother, I guarantee you, has been long supported by state and federal government, because there have been long periods of his life. I don't care if he's listening either, because I'd say all this right to him. Long periods of time.
Now, hold on, Chris. Let me put a little bit of the brakes on here.
Sure.
The big government-loving liberals are not actually the biggest government teat suckers. That's actually a lot more common in the red states, where they're on a lot more government programs, but they still vote against getting those programs for themselves and everyone else. So I mean, you can look up those stats really, really easily and see that the red states use a lot more government resources than they contribute.
Sure. Well, I would. I mean, you can look at that other ways too, like our farm subsidies, government funding. I'd say it is. The military, frankly, is one of the biggest.
Don't get me started on the farm subsidies.
Right.
I'm with you there.
And then the military would be one you could look at, with the caveat that obviously those are people that are obviously putting their lives at risk defending the nation. But the irony with the anarchists are, oh, no government. Oh, really? Really? That's what I tell my brother. Really? You don't like the government, do you, pal? You love the government, because without the government, you wouldn't have any money in your pocket. So I only say that because I've had sort of an interesting perspective where I don't trust the police, because I've seen it happen. I've seen the Chicago news where I've seen my brother, my friend calls me, hey, turn on the news. Why? Oh, your brother's on CNN. Oh, really? Why? Well, he was arrested for terrorism. Oh, okay, let me turn the TV on. I mean, it's almost kind of comedic. But I turn on the television, and they're making him out to be the world's most dangerous man, and it's complete fiction, total fiction. And then on the other hand, you have the narrative that he's this big freedom fighter, and he's like this modern-day anarchist Che Guevara. Couldn't be further from the truth. So that's why I like sort of the anti-media perspective on things, to try to get more into the grassroots, get some more perspectives, to really dig in and see what's real, what's fake, because most people on both sides of the political spectrum have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, they could not survive a 3-sentence debate, because after the first sentence, they're spent. And I think we'd probably agree with that.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I'm really not
Olly,
sure half the time.
We're definitely going to have Mark on. Because
Yeah.
I would love to talk to this guy at this point. That would be a lot of fun.
I'm sure he could be booked. He lives in Seattle area, but I could probably. But then I'd actually have to return his calls. But for you, I'll do it.
Excellent.
We'll
Gary,
we'll
you sort
get
that
in
out,
contact.
mate.
That'll be fine.
Splendid.
I used to live in Seattle. It's going to be great.
Top notch. It's going to be marvelous. Yeah, Chris, that's your cue, mate. It's going to be marvelous, mate. So,
I actually had a friend who was tear gassed, sitting in his own living room during the NAFTA protests, where the cops came in and just gassed entire streets. And yeah, my friend had his living room window open on a second or third story apartment, and the gas drifted up into his window and gassed him out. It was nuts.
Yeah. Sorry. I wanted to change the subject. Gary, that was fascinating, mate. It really was. But I just wanted to ask, getting back to this media thing, because Gary, you basically accused Chris of being in the pocket of Rupert Murdoch, and
I don't know if he's in his pocket.
Now, you guys know I
be
don't get
trying to
paid.
be. I don't know.
I don't get paid though, so I just want to throw that caveat out there. I'm a guest.
No, quite right. Absolutely fair play. I'm curious, who would you say, guys, is more balanced between Fox on the one side and CNN on the other?
Well, I'm going to go with Fox just because they have a liberal guest on. I mean, whether or not they get mowed down or not, there's always a liberal guest on there with a liberal perspective. And CNN is, you guys can Google, Chris Neiweem, Trump's attack on McCain's demeans veterans. I wrote an article for CNN, an op-ed in 2015, criticizing President Trump, then candidate Trump, for his remarks on McCain. And I was happy to do it because I disagreed with what he said. But CNN, essentially, they loved it because they wanted an anti-Trump perspective more than anything, and they even dialed up my comments a little more because they wanted to fit the narrative. So, which is fine. I know that's what they were doing, but I do think that CNN, and again, I understand that the political message that the young lady was expressing in that example we discussed earlier. But the fact is, the headline was not grieving victim sister calls for, moving the domestic disturbance, across town. It was, she calls for peace. Exact opposite of the truth. So I think CNN has got a little ways to go at this point.
Well, I mean, between CNN and Fox, that's like saying, would you rather get stabbed in the eye or shot in the liver? Neither one of them are a good option. You shouldn't really involve yourself in either one if you want to remain healthy. There's just no way. Go to the anti-media. Go to lots and lots of alternate news sources and find your own. Spend the time. Jeez.
It is true, though, is it not, that there is a considerable disparity between the amount of pro-DNC and pro-GOP. There's a lot more pro-DNC. Way, way, way more. Like 80-20 sort of thing.
But I would make and again, I think talk radio has been dominated by conservatives, but
well, true, yeah. But how many people listen to talk radio compared to watching the telly?
That's dying. That's dying out pretty hard.
Obviously, they listen to us, but mainstream talk radio. Obviously Russian.
Of course, the show right now, our ratings are probably through the roof with NSA because Revolution Radio. I mean, they've got to be listening. I mean, that just sounds exciting right there.
They should be. We got it going on.
But I would say the print press still is extremely liberal. And I mean, even just as a guy that studies politics, you could give me the liberal argument and I'll put the case forward and maybe do a good job presenting the liberal case. But the print, it is such a bias, and maybe that's part of it, is to have that bias so that to sort of speak for some of those groups that feel that they're underrepresented. But we're in a new era. I think it's exciting. I mean, I think the next 4 years are going to be exciting. It's certainly not going to be boring. We're going to have plenty of stuff to talk about. There's going to be a lot of moving parts.
I got a question for both of you.
Circuses are also not boring, but you don't want to have them in government, even though we do. But now, print media, most media has, it's not so much a left bias versus right bias. It's all pro-corporate bias. That's all it is. It's just
okay. All right, we've
serve
covered
the
that. Look,
advertiser.
we've covered that largely. I do want to ask about whistleblowers because we've only got a few minutes left, and this is a question to both of you guys because I am a bit concerned that Trump. One of the things that it would have been really, really cool to have seen, along with the improved relations with Russia, which he certainly seems to be signifying, I think, despite that buzz pass the other day and stuff like that. One of the things it would have been so nice to have seen would have been an outreach to whistleblowers. And I'm thinking particularly, he did completely the opposite with Chelsea Manning. And he said that he was, I think he called him, maybe not a traitor, but he said he was ungrateful, that's for sure, about the pardon he got. Or he didn't get a pardon, did he? He got a kind of a turn a blind eye.
He got a commutation. I mean, I feel like whistleblowing, I think it's easier for the executives to leave their hands off it as long as they can because it's so nuanced. I mean, I personally think that Chelsea Manning, should do a good 15 years in prison. I mean, 35 years. I don't know. Here's the thing: you have to read the op-ed from the basic training classmate of Chelsea Manning that shows that, Bradley Manning, that bad soldier, never did the job, always had to be carried, broke protocol, did all these things, and essentially was a subpar soldier. And you see, I understand.
But the bottom line, though, what he whistleblowed was Abu Ghraib, wasn't it?
I think
it was also the helicopter pilots gunning down civilians and laughing about it. That was the big one.
There is a moral case, is there not? That's the kind of stuff that needs to come out, Chris. No.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I mean, again, though, in the haze of war. I mean, again,
no.
Well, but okay, you're saying, but see, you're saying, Gary, you're saying that they're gunning down civilians and laughing about it. I don't see that. We're not sitting here together right now in a courtroom looking at that tape and looking at the characterization of those. I don't know that. I mean, again,
collateral murder video that's available readily online.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can send it to me, but I'm saying there's stuff that we see every day and we jump to these conclusions. The fact is, if everyone did what Bradley Manning did, we could not have a military. We would not be functioning. What if every day we woke up, the military said, we don't want to work today? I mean, I'm sorry, but there needs to be some sort of regimentation.
That is a pragmatic argument, Gary. No, I mean, there are two sides to this.
No, if the soldiers that do show up to work gun down civilians and laugh about it, do we really want to have that as our military?
Well, I agree with that.
But people are prosecuted all the time for stuff like that. I mean, that's sort of the complexities of warfare now, is identifying who's who, and those things should be prosecuted and have, and that's good. But again, you send this to foreign press, you do those sorts of things. Now, I will give you this: holding up WikiLeaks as a political sort of advantage in the election sort of makes the president hypocritical to say, well, now it's a good thing. I mean, the fact is, it should all come with a caution sign. But to me, President Obama pardoning Chelsea.
Yeah, but WikiLeaks isn't necessarily military leaks. So I mean,
sure.
It mainly concerned things like John Podesta during the campaign and things like that. But
one thing about Trump and whistleblowers is that Trump has already told all of the research arms of the executive branch to stop releasing all data to the public. That was one of the executive orders he signed. And that is not a good sign as far as his relationship to whistleblowing. If even just the research scientists who publish their findings are not allowed to publish their findings anymore, that is not good, folks.
Similar stuff's going on in the UK. They're trying to clamp down on whistleblowing. I have to say, it's a very difficult one. I mean, these guys take an oath to serve the American people, don't they? And not the American government. And so you could argue that, they should be whistleblowing from that point of view. But on the other hand, sure, it's not, good for an overall morale or what have you. But any kind of murder has to be stamped on, and there has been some really nasty stuff. I mean, not just. I mean, I don't know if it's you or Nick. I think it was Nick that mentioned the Saudi. No, I think it was you, Chris, that mentioned the British arms sales to Saudi Arabia. Quite aside from the US ones, there's been a a big debate in the UK Parliament about that recently, but it's kind of been just brushed under the carpet as much as possible, because the fact is that the Treasury does pretty well out of British arms sales. It is, I think, Britain's number 2 industry after financial services, and the other thing is they I don't know what the other thing was. I'm just getting het up here, but we do have to have ethics in government as well, and I understand it's very difficult because presidents need to be pragmatic too. But let me throw out a bit of a sort of a googly here. For example, would it not be in the interest of the world? Trump mentioned about doing things in the interest of the world, not just the US earlier in his presser. If we were to turn around to China, over a period of time, you don't turn a super tanker around overnight. But if we basically said, you know what, we're not going to trade with you guys until you have an election. I mean, I know that's not pragmatic from the point of view of trade, but if we really want to improve this world, we need to do things like that, don't we? Otherwise, we're getting nowhere.
Let me just tell you, Olly, Gary, let me take that one. I've been beating China for many years. All I do is beat China. I beat China on Monday. I'm going to beat China tomorrow, okay? They're manipulating their currency. Trump ties. I'd love to make them in Indiana. Sorry, I had to do a little Trump bit.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
That was bottled up for 25 minutes. I had to get that out. But I do think there's something fair there. I think that that'd be fair. But again, I think we all sort of agreed that, those global hypocritical political trends always emerge where, the elections are over, governments settle in, and they look for ways to be mutually beneficial. And many times it's at the detriment to at least large blocks of their own citizenry. And I think that certainly we see that with Saudi Arabia. I mean, you see,
oh, mate, that's it. Oh, no, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, Chris. Chris Neiweem, thank you so much. Nick Bernabe. Gary Branson was here with me, Olly Connolly, on Jingly-Jangly at Revolution Radio. And thank you, Chris and Nick. Thank you. I'm really sorry. I'm bugging up the timing, basically. Next week, the Brexit debate. Yeah, alrighty. Okay, so this is my territory, yeah? Brexit debate. We got 2 British migrants head to head having a tussle.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.